If this bill gets visibility and enough co-sponsors, we can really press the issue with our elected officials and those running for office to give it credibility. It was a top issue of President Trump. It got cheers all the time at his rallies. There's really no reason this can't get done because it's the right thing to do for our kids.
Welcome to Unmasking Government Schools with Sherry Few, USPIE's weekly podcast that empowers parents to reclaim their children's education from government bureaucrats and social engineers, equipping you with the tools and resources needed to join the cause.
Hi everyone, welcome to Unmasking Government Schools with Sherry Few. I'm your host, April Few, in for Sherry, and today we have Melanie Kurdys with us, who is USPIE board member and Michigan PIE chapter president. Thanks for being with us today, Melanie.
I'm very happy to be with you, April. You've been doing a great job filling in for Sherry. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, so Melanie and I have worked together for about 10 years now, and I'm really excited for her to share what she and a couple of our other PIE chapter presidents have been doing regarding some legislation to eliminate the U.S. Department of Education, because that is USPIE's mission, and it always has been. Is to close the U.S. Department of Education and return control of education to parents and local communities by ending all federal education mandates. So that's a mouthful, but it's very important, all of those aspects. So let's start with the Department of Education and President Trump. He had an executive order earlier this year. Can you explain that to us and what actions Secretary McMahon has been taking to follow through on Trump's executive order?
Yes, thank you very much. I heard you mention that your oldest was 10, and I thought, my gosh, the time has flown. We have been working at this for a long time, and I have to say the last time I was optimistic was when President Trump was elected and campaigned on closing the Department of Education. And this time he still seems serious, and like you said, he issued an executive order. It was last March. And it was just what we were looking for. It wasn't namby-pamby. It was close the Department of Education and get the federal government out, because he referenced the history of the department and the lack of student achievement as a result of it. So, imagine you're Secretary McMahon and you have some authority, but you cannot undo all the laws that have been passed over the years that structure why and how the federal government is impacting education. So she, taking the spirit of the executive order, has been downsizing the Department of Education itself and developing these agreements with other departments to take over the functions so that she can deliver at least on the promise of getting rid of the department itself. Then the argument is that there's some bureaucracy reduction that could result in some savings, and that's arguably possible, depending on how much staff she moves with the functions and so forth. But those are temporary agreements. As with all executive orders, without legislation, they can be undone by the next president. And who knows, regardless of party, they may well undo all of this. And so now we're still looking at that we want to move forward in implementing the actual vision that President Trump has articulated.
Wow. So you said moving the functions and that Secretary McMahon, closing the U.S. Department of Education is great, but moving the functions to other agencies is not what USPIE supports. Do you want to elaborate at all?
Yeah, for one thing, if the Department of Education, the Department of Education cannot improve educational outcomes for kids, I don't know why anybody thinks the Department of Labor, the Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Agriculture, all of these other departments who are the recipients of these programs could possibly do a better job. So it doesn't make any sense. Sure. Back in the day, there were times when the Department of Education was part of the Department of Health and Human Services. It was structured a little bit differently. But it doesn't change the fact that the federal government is too far away from children to be able to effectively manage and positively impact outcomes for kids. We all know, I mean, every parent knows every child is different. Every child learns different. They react different. They respond differently. They're motivated differently. There's no way a big federal government thousands of miles away can positively impact the relationship between the adult who is the teacher and the child. And so it just it I understand what Secretary McMahon is trying to do. And as a matter of fact, Heritage Foundation in their Project 2025 kind of has a similar model where they move functions to other departments to provide a window of, like, I don't know, 10 to 15 years of reducing the power of the federal government in terms of education. And it's not going to work. It's not what will actually end up with a better outcome for students.
What kind of legislation is there already out in Congress that would do what USPIE is wanting to do? Eliminate it altogether.
Okay, so there is HR 369, which I don't have to mention that number anymore because it's the bad bill. It's the bill that Congress codifies what Secretary McMahon is doing and what the Heritage Foundation has recommended. It merely moves functions to other departments and offers some sort of potential promise of 10, 15 years down the road. But the bill that we support, HR 2691, this is the right bill. And it's a very simple bill. And if you read it, you can be fooled by how simple it is. But it eliminates the Department of Education and terminates all the programs within the department. So ESSA, all the Title I, the special ed programs, all those programs from the federal government are terminated. And that it's just as simple as that. And that is really what needs to happen. Now, people
Melanie,
panic.
real
There
quick,
is, yeah.
what happens to the programs though? What
Well,
happens,
that's what we want to talk about.
Okay.
Right. We want to go through all of that. So make sure
Okay.
people understand this
Yes.
is not a bad thing. I want to
Right.
say there's one program that is moved. It's Pell Grants. What we struggled with what to do with financial loan programs and stuff like that, and they want to move it to the Department of Treasury. We'd really like to see those privatized in the long run, but for the purposes of what we're doing here, that really is not a problematic exemption. So, like I say, the bill is only 3 pages long. What it does do is it continues to send every state money from the federal government, but it sends it in one bulk deposit from the federal government to the state departments of education. And it's not a grant. The original title of the bill does have grant. We think we need to have that title removed. But it is, if you read the legislation itself, it takes and it calculates how much money each state will get. Now, the bill originally had it driven by the amount of federal income taxes paid to the state. That's an important detail that we actually liked, but one of the congressman's aides that we were talking to, the staff that looked at this, said, well, that means our state will get a lot less money than we used to, because he's right. States pay into the federal government on a different rate than they get money back out. So we're offering a friendly amendment to change the way that it's calculated to say the amount of money that a state received in 2025 is the amount of money that they will receive the next year after this bill is implemented. So imagine that money, if South Carolina is getting $6 billion, whatever, that they will continue to get that amount of money in a bulk, without a grant, without strings. And that's our goal. And the goal in the long run is to begin to draw that money down. So what they can do is if they calculate based on the total, the percent that each state gets right now and continue that percent distribution, they can begin to draw that money down as states are able to devise their own tax strategies to cover the cost if they determine it. Now, we have done calculations that really show that with all the red tape and bureaucracy that comes with this money, it's not worth what you get a lot less than you think you do because of all that red tape. So then people ask, that's the important question, what happens to all those programs? Well, first of all, the states will run them. The states will run them. So anything that you did that the federal government made you do that you like as a state, there's no reason you have to change that. But there are a lot of things that the federal government is requiring us to do that a lot of professionals in the education community don't like. For example, I was talking to one of our USPIE chapter presidents who is a very long time special ed member of the community. She was a teacher, she was a counselor, she was in the special ed business. And she said, in the olden days, before they got all this help from the federal government, you could do an IEP that was a real program to help each child between the parent and the teacher and maybe an aide or a counselor, and really look at what did the child need. It wasn't a form, it was, and it was what can we do for this child that will really help them be able to learn. And she said it went from usually about 2 pages to like 15 to 20 pages. Because the federal government has all these forms and boxes and things you have to ask and check, and it really undermines the professionalism of the teacher and the staff at the school, and it undermines the uniqueness of each child. And especially in the special ed community, each child presents with their own kinds of learning limitations, and there isn't a standard program that's going to work for each child. So the freedom to really devise an IEP that meant something for the child had been taken away. And so what we're doing is we're saying return that control. And our vision, as you had said earlier, is to return the control to the local community and the parents, so that even the local community should have the authority beyond their own state to do what they think is right in order to help children learn. And I think once you realize that, okay, we're not taking away the money from the beginning. So anything you worried about that you need funds to be able to execute, it's still going to be there.
Right.
But now what you get to do is think about how are we doing this so that it could really benefit the children. Truth of the matter is, some states will do a good job and some states will not. I mean, that's just the nature of our federation. Every state is different. But that was the whole point that our founders said, that the more you put responsibilities closer to the level of where it makes a difference, that's where you can affect positive change. So
Right.
all the people that are panicking by thinking about getting the federal government out, that all the programs are going to fall apart, it defies logic, because the adults in that system aren't going to let it fall apart. It's going to fall apart, all the skimming of that money along the way by unions or special interest groups that are now cut out of the process
That's
and will
right.
have to find a new way to get their, schemes and fingers into it. And eventually they could, which is again why you really have to start over time to reduce that funding so that you're really focusing on closer to the source.
Yeah. What is the quote? Those closest to the people govern best, or something
Right,
along those
right,
lines. It's a lot easier to
right.
influence your local school board than it is a member of Congress, like you were mentioning. Um,
Absolutely, absolutely.
right. Aren't some states already doing programs on their own that I don't know if it was you or someone else on one of our calls, it might have been Sherry, had mentioned that there are some states who, it was like the free and reduced lunch program. They didn't like the federal government's quality of the food or whatever it was, and so they just did it their own. Isn't that
Right.
right?
Yeah, so there are still two programs that will not be terminated as a result of this legislation because they already are not in the Department of Education. One is the free and reduced lunch, which is in the Department of Agriculture, and one is in the Department of Health and Human Services, which is the Head Start, early childhood, the Head Start
Right.
program.
That's
But
right.
both of those are excellent examples of they could be followed on with the same structure because terminating them actually does provide freedom to act. In our blueprint, I think it was the blueprint to help states become independent of the federal department. We have actual examples of school districts that eliminated the free and reduced lunch,
Yes, that's right.
partnered with local farm community to get fresher food, better food,
Yep.
less garbage food that kids don't eat anyway, and cheaper. And
Yes.
cheaper.
Yes.
So it was like we had real concrete examples of school districts doing that. And so you start saying, well, we can do it. We can do if you let your local communities take that back, they can do it. Now, Head Start is another good example. Most states have their own early childhood program. And the problem is you can't partner in a common facility very easily Head Start and your state programs because the rules are different. And it's amazing. I was on an early childhood program in the Kalamazoo area in Michigan, and we tried to incorporate a structure so that we could have facilities have Head Start, our Michigan Great Start program, and private providers so that all children from the community could go to the same early childhood because, right? It was, we had a terrible time because of the rules of Head Start differed from the rules of the state. And our think tank in Michigan, the Mackinac Policy Center, did a study, and they showed that the student outcomes for our state program were better than the student outcomes for the Head Start program. Now, some could argue that it's, because of the kids that happen to be in each program, but the point is it's so much better and so much cheaper that and so much closer in relationship to the parent and the child that it's worth trying. And so there we go, that if we got to the point of being able to eliminate those programs, which would be awesome, there are specific examples of how the state and the local community can do it better. I have another one for you that's just current. Mississippi just is being touted as a miracle happening in Mississippi. Kids are learning how to read. And it's amazing. All of a sudden, they're making huge progress in children being able to read. And so it's curious, what are they doing? Well, they're using phonics to teach kids how to read. And
Wow.
Common Core, which, came through in like 14, 2015, whatever time when your state incorporated it into their standards, specifically did away with phonics.
Right.
And so for, 10 years or more, we've been intentionally teaching teachers how to not teach kids to read and intentionally not teaching kids to read. And, it's like all of a sudden somebody discovered this secret that homeschool moms discovered. So it's just shocking. And so it clearly returning control back to the states and the local communities is the thing that's going to positively impact student outcomes. And so we really have to make that thing happen.
Amen. I'd like to go into the status of the bill, but before
Great.
we talk about that, we need to take a short break. So don't go away, guys. I'll be right back with my interview with Melanie Kurdys.
Today's episode is brought to you by U.S. parents involved in education. USPIE's mission is to empower parents and local communities to break free from federal and national influences. thereby reclaiming parental authority over their children's education. For more insights from U.S. parents involved in education, connect with us at USPIE on X and Facebook. To join the movement, visit uspie.org.
Welcome back to Unmasking Government Schools with Sherry Few. I'm your host, April Few, and we are back with Melanie Kurdys today, USPIE board member and Michigan PIE chapter president. We are talking about H.R. 2691, a federal piece of legislation that USPIE is supporting to eliminate the Department of Education and send money back to the states. Melanie, can you please tell us what is the current status of that bill? How many co-sponsors, all the details, please.
I'm very excited. We did discover H.R. 2691, which was authored by Alabama Congressman Moore, and did contact his office and got to talk to his education staff and, told them how much we liked their bill and that we plan to support it. And they were very positive. And so the bill at that time and still is in the House Education and Workforce Committee. So then we started launching efforts to contact all of the committee members. And I fortunately was able to meet with Congressman Wahlberg. He's a Michigan congressman. He's not my congressman, but he graciously offered to meet with me, which, most people understand that congressmen meet with their own constituents and they don't, unless you're a lobbyist, they don't give precedent to meeting with people outside. And so it was a great opportunity. He's a friend of my congressman and Congressman Huizenga, and he was able to help me get that meeting. And it was a very positive conversation. He's very supportive of this bill, but you can't act alone. And he says you can't, as a chair, you can't just make things happen. You have to get the support of the members of the committee to get it out of committee. And he was very fair, and he said he's not sure that there's any chance that this bill could actually become law this year. I mean, we can pray and try, but everybody is watching the Senate. They can't even pass the SAVE Act, which is everybody agrees with. So it's like, okay. But our thought is that if this bill gets visibility and enough co-sponsors, that moving through this political cycle, we can really press the issue with our elected officials and those running for office to give it credibility. So we continue to meet with the committee members. I'm excited because we actually have some of the committee members moving to support. Congressman Joe Wilson from South Carolina is one who's been very supportive. His staff was very helpful. They were the ones that helped us identify the financial distribution issues and is supporting the potential change to the bill, the amendment to the bill to fix that. So that's really exciting. We have conversations with a number of the other congressmen. It is endorsed by 4 other congressmen, and there is a new one, and I forget who it is. I think it's from South Carolina. Who might it be from South Carolina?
Is it Ralph Norman?
Yes. Ralph Norman is a new co-sponsor on the bill.
Good for Ralph. I
Yes.
really love Ralph Norman.
Yes. So Congressman Norman, we want to thank him very much for jumping in and co-sponsoring. And so he is showing the current congressman that momentum. So, Thomas Massey, Congressman Massey has a bill, Congressman Massey.
Yes.
He's always submits this bill. It's a one-liner, close the Department of Education. And we can't support that because, as you see with these 2 other bills, there are different ways that can be done, and he doesn't articulate which ones. And it will take act of Congress to undo the legislation that has been passed before. But we are hopeful that we can get him and the other people who have endorsed his bill, which has about 20 co-signers, to support this bill. And there's only one that's also on this committee, so we're also contacting them and working that way. And I would really like to say to your audience, it doesn't matter if your congressman is on the committee or not. We encourage you to contact them and give your support to 2691, HR 2691, and ask them to have their staff seriously look at this legislation and to, if you can't endorse it now, you're for some reason, but you're looking at it, have conversations, reach out, encourage them to talk to us. If they can co-sponsor, that would be awesome. You don't have to be on the committee to co-sponsor. And then people who are running for office, I think really would benefit their campaigns by picking this up as an issue, because it was a top issue. President Trump, it got cheers all the time at his rallies. It continues to be a high priority for Americans. I know it's taking a backseat to a lot of other issues, but there's really no reason this can't get done and should be done, because it's the right thing to do for our kids. I would also encourage people to call their senators because, again, as an issue coming forward, the more they hear that there is support for doing this exact thing, and there is a bill, they could draft a similar bill in the Senate, that it does give it legislative momentum. And we really need that. We really need, as if you remember the fight in Common Core, there it was groundswell of moms and dads who came forward and said, we don't want Common Core. And so many states responded, and they did their best to try to get it out of the curriculum, but it became an issue because we made it an issue. People on the ground made it an issue. And so, we don't have a bunch of paid lobbyists, on our side on this issue. There are going to be lots of paid lobbyists who will fight what we're recommending, but it's the right thing to do. And President Trump has demonstrated a commitment to trying to do the right things, and we would really like this to be part of his legacy. It would be awesome.
Would be, yes. So if people, if a listener is very serious about meeting with their member of Congress, I mean, I'm sure, would even be willing to coach someone who is not comfortable at all. Maybe they've never even contacted their member of Congress and they just want a little help. You guys can go to our website and join the movement, and you'll be put in touch with a USPIE staff who can connect you with Melanie or give you some details or some help approaching your congressman with this, because it can be very intimidating. So USPIE is definitely willing to help if somebody is really wanting to meet with their congressman, but you can also just give them a call. You don't have to meet face to face. Any other advice?
We have talking points. Uh, okay. 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 Yes, join the USPIE movement, uspie.org. We have talking points about the legislation there that you can look at. We have contacts, and I have had several people contact me with different strategies. One, they felt comfortable enough that they wanted to move ahead, but they wanted to have the conversation so that they felt really informed. I've had others who asked to meet three-way, phone three-way conversations these days, or like web type, like
Zoom.
whatever,
Yeah.
Zoom, those. A lot of the congressmen use those, and their staff do. So we've done those kinds of meetings. And if you just open the door to tell the congressman, look, I, don't know enough about it, but I'd like you to talk with Melanie Kurdys from USPIE. Would you please do that? That opens the door, and I'm happy to do that. So any of those strategies really works. And we don't send out form letters so much for you to send. I know that's recommended. It's easy. A lot of people do it, but we want your support to be authentic. And we think the congressmen get numb to those kinds of forms and so forth. And so we really encourage you to use your own brain, your own words, your own orientation to the issue, and your own concerns, and put it in your own words and let them know. And we really appreciate any support that the audience can give us as we move forward.
Totally, totally. Well, we do need to take another short break, but when we come back, we will continue our interview with Melanie Kurdys.
For over 50 years, government schools have been dumbing down teacher preparation. Teachers in training are now ignorant of successful pedagogies. Instead, they are studying techniques that impede learning and condition children into political activism. Today, most colleges of education emphasize postmodern pedagogies, focusing primarily on technique. They neglect age-old but proven methods that are making a comeback in home-based and private schools. Classical learning based on the trivium is an easily understood model of child development that employs phonics, foundational arithmetic instruction, Latin, great literature, and cursive writing. U.S. Parents Involved in Education believes teacher preparation must be reformed to focus on knowledge and skills that truly help students learn. To join our movement, visit USPIE.org and connect with us at USPIE on Facebook and X.
Welcome back to Unmasking Government Schools with Sherry Few. I'm your host, April Few, in for Sherry, and we are back with Melanie Kurdys, USPIE board member and Michigan PIE chapter president. I want to quickly talk about USPIE.org, the website for USPIE. It's USPIE.org, and if you go there right at the top, there's a tab for resources. If you click on that, there's actually a whole page for support for HR 2691, which is the bill that USPIE is supporting to close the Department of Education and send the money back to the states. But there's a call and email guide, there's an email template to Congress, there's the executive order from Trump, and there's the actual piece of legislation, HR 2691, all right there. And I'm going to open up the call and email guide. Yeah, talking points, the switchboard number, and literally a step-by-step of what to say, or an email if you want to send an email, and then a list of all the Republican members of the Workforce and Education Committee and the Democrat members. So it is very extensive. It's all the information you need, and here's the email to Congress. So USPIE.org resources is where you should go to find out more. Melanie, do you want to just reiterate the top points that you want everybody to remember, please?
Sure. So it's 2691, HR 2691, and the key points are it terminates the programs that are currently in the Department of Education and returns the control to the states. It doesn't move them to other departments. It doesn't wait for years to have this done. It terminates those programs, and it will send money back to the states without strings. It's not a grant. It's a once a year deposit to the State Department of Education. Then don't be afraid of this, because you're able to continue programs you want to continue. You can change programs you want to continue. The state now has the authority to act, the real control, and that's the point. So if there's something that the federal government was giving you guidelines on and you like those guidelines, keep using them. But if you have better programs, you have better ideas, you have people within your state who want to try something different, you are now free to do so. And we believe this is a first step in moving control back where it belongs, and that's with parents and the local community. So it's very simple and straightforward. I think people are always shocked when you come up with a solution to a big government problem, and it's actually very easy. But a lot of times I think we put hurdles in front of ourselves that are out of fear of change, or our arguments from people who are profiting with the current system that aren't actually providing value. And so it's really, parents are the key place, and teachers. I think teachers should also be key supporters of this legislation and not to be afraid of moving it forward.
Guys, visit USPIE.org, and if you really want to talk one-on-one with Melanie or set up some sort of appointment with your congressman and you just really want that support, please join the movement through there. And there's a little place where you can send a message. And if that's something that you're interested in doing, we will certainly get back in touch with you. So, Melanie, we're going to close our show with 2 questions that we ask all of our guests. And I'm sure you're familiar with this, but Melanie, can you please tell the audience what concerns you most about what is happening in government schools? And I'm interested to hear your response on that. And then what gives you hope?
All right. Well, what really concerns me is this whole point of control and power. That I believe if you look at what's happening in the classrooms and in school, we know children are not being educated well, but we also know children are being taught things that are incredibly harmful to the children. The books that are clearly pornographic, the sexual exposure to young children, kindergarten and first graders. This is very harmful. Teaching little kids that they can change the essence of who they are from being a boy to being a girl is very harmful. Teaching children that their parents aren't their first most important primary caregiver, that the school knows better, the teachers know better, the counselors know better. There are so many subtle messages that our children are getting in government schools that are harmful to them. And so, although we recommend we have all these programs to try to help figure out how to improve our government schools, bottom line, these changes are going to take a long time. And a lot of the people in the schools genuinely believe they're doing the right thing for our children. They have a completely different worldview. I don't think most of them have a malicious intent. They just don't see the world the way we see it. And so, bottom line, to protect your own child, you need to get them out of the government schools. You need to homeschool. You need to find a good religious, best if it's classical model school in your community. You need to work with with parents on home co-ops. You need to not take any government money for that, but you really need to get your kids out of the government schools and protect them and teach them the right way. And so on the other end, I'm hopeful because we have record numbers of families homeschooling. We have record numbers of families leaving the government schools. I mean, you can see headlines where the schools are panicking. They don't have enough kids to even sustain the structure that they have. And good. I think we are demonstrating that the system of homeschooling and good private schooling are so much better for children that parents are seeing it and opting for it because it is a better system. And we encourage that completely.
Yes, thank you, Melanie. I think it was in Charleston County, South Carolina, or Berkeley County, one of those on the coast, was paying students 25 or families $25 a week per student for perfect attendance. So they are trying different things. And there's also USPIE had a news release many months ago, but it was about schools hiring recruiters to help recruit families because there's so many leaving. So yeah, I think that is pretty hopeful that parents are waking up and saying, hey, we're going to do our own thing. We're going to do what Nikki Truesdale says is the most American thing you can do is just do it yourself. Don't rely on anyone else. You put your trust and faith in God and all else falls into place. So yeah, we just need to have that American chutzpah and passion and just not be so fearful of what if they are not reading as well as others? What if they're not socialized? I laugh because all the excuses are just like, they're not excuses anymore. With all the internet and all of the resources and all of the homeschoolers, none of those are excuses. So
Yeah. In the 10 years you've been homeschooling, you've seen a change, haven't you?
yes, yeah, for sure. And there's a lot more families now in the homeschool arena that are only homeschooling because of the COVID stuff, not necessarily because the Holy Spirit has convicted them. So it's interesting. That's interesting. The situations that you find yourself in, even in homeschooling. So,
Yeah. Well, I think the powers that be may have had some of the COVID backlash surprise them in that, no, we didn't fall asleep. We saw what our children were doing and opened our eyes. And
great.
so I don't think they expected that to be a big outcome from that pandemic, but boy, it was a God sent result for sure.
Yeah, Sherry, I think, says it was the great parent awakening.
Yeah,
So,
right, parent
um,
awakening. Yeah.
well, Melanie, thank you so much for all of the work that you do. Melanie volunteers countless hours because she's so passionate about helping children and our country's freedom. So thank you, Melanie, for joining us today. And to our listeners, if you found today's discussion eye-opening, please give us a thumbs up or a 5-star rating. And you can, again, visit USPIE.org to join the movement and learn more. Don't forget to check out those resources regarding the legislation that is active right now. Thank you so much for your support of USPIE. I am April Few, and thanks for supporting our efforts to unmask government schools.
U.S. Parents Involved in Education is a nonprofit coalition dedicated to restoring local control of education and parental authority. By empowering parents to reclaim responsibility for their children's learning and encouraging states to move away from federal influence, USPIE seeks to create a culture where parents are the primary decision makers in education and schools support families without the burden of federal mandates. If you want to start a state or regional USPIE chapter in your area, please visit uspie.org and complete the brief questionnaire in the chapters section.